I can't wait to introduce to you. This is David Wilcock. Now, most of you have heard of him. And if you haven't, let me tell you, David is the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. I have been an unabashed fan of his for the longest time, so I'm just absolutely thrilled to pieces to be able to interview him this morning and to present him to you. David, for those of you who may not know this, has just written a phenomenal new book that I thought I was going to have trouble getting through because it's about 3 inches thick, and I have not been able to put it down. I know I'm going to have to reread it because there is not one extraneous word in the book. His background, as you know, those of you who have followed him, David is the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. He is a professional lecturer, filmmaker, and researcher of ancient civilizations. That doesn't even begin to describe it. Those are understatements. He has an upcoming Hollywood film called Convergence, which unveils the proof that all life on Earth is united in a field of consciousness, which affects our minds. It affects our lives. Now, his website is divinecosmos.com, and the name of his fantastic new book, which I'm holding in my hand now, is The Source Field Investigations. David, good morning and welcome.
Well, thank you. It's really great to be here, and I'm interested to hear your questions because you're one of the very first people in the world to have read this book. And, everybody else out there is either hoping to get their copy soon or hasn't even decided if they're going to order it yet. But I like the fact that you said there's no extraneous word. I mean, it is absolutely true. There are some parts of the book that were written relatively quickly, but even those parts of the book were probably combed over with maybe 20 editing passes. And some of the parts of the book, like especially the first half about all the DNA stuff, that was written with sometimes over 80, 90 different editing passes.
Wow.
And, so there's over 1,000 references in there, and there were some heartbreaking contractions that I had to put in terms of, just getting everything down. I mean, literally, the book is not 3 inches thick. You might scare people saying that. It's about 2.5.
2.5. But every word is powerful. There is no, and I understand what it means to have a book edited because I'm an author also. But still,
there were a couple heartbreaking runs. I mean, one was I had 2 whole sections that we had to delete entirely.
Oh.
And I thought they were both fantastic, and they are. One of them was on the cycles of history. I had some absolutely amazing information showing that the precession of the equinoxes breaks down, that's the 25,000-year cycle I keep talking about. It's a wobble in the Earth's axis.
Right. Astrologers know that.
You can look at events in history and actually see that there are repeating cycles where the same events happen along new turns of the spiral. And I know as an astrologer, this is your domain.
Absolutely.
Well, now we're getting into the great year. You got the signs of the zodiac in typical year. Somebody's a Pisces or a Libra or a Scorpio, and you're probably analyzing why I chose those 3 already.
I know because I have your chart, David. I've seen Mr. Pisces himself. I've seen your chart.
Yeah, I got Scorpio rising too. How about that?
The most powerful sign in the zodiac.
Indeed.
Yes, absolutely.
So, anyway, if you look at the astrology of the great year, it's 25,000 years, but yet it still is broken down into ages of the zodiac. And apparently, these ages of the zodiac are definitely not arbitrary. They are very much real cycles that correspond to influences in human consciousness. And it was a fascinating discussion. I got really into it. In fact, I got so into writing that little part of the book and the part about the pyramid timeline, which is the other part we deleted entirely. There was over 100, almost 200 pages that we had to get rid of. research proved that the pyramid timeline was misinterpreted by Peter Lemzurier, and it actually flags the year 2012 as a highly, highly significant symbol inside the pyramid. In fact, the only carved symbol in the pyramid that actually means something is a symbol of what could either be a rainbow or a rising sun. And if you understand what the pyramid timeline is and how it works, the time when that rainbow or rising sun appears in the timeline is 2012. So that actually got removed, and then the other part that got removed was these cycles of history, because I think we're probably going to do that in the sequel. I mean, I've already been discussing it with the publisher. There will be a sequel, and a lot of this stuff we're going to put back in. So it's not like it's lost.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, the cycles of history, really, it's a sort of a difficult discussion because it gets technical, and you have to speak about historical events and document them in enough detail that people can get the gist of what happened, and then also document how they reiterated in other cycles, and so you can't just blow through it. You've got to really stop and think.
Yes.
And Graham Hancock had some trouble with this. He said he didn't feel it was convincing, but I gather that might have been because he was reading too fast. I don't know. I mean, Graham and I kind of had a disagreement about that, but I wanted him to write the introduction, and he just felt it wasn't strong enough. And then another thing that was a heartbreaking change I had to make is originally the chapter on the time-traveling dinosaurs was an entire chapter.
Oh, my God, that's one of the most fascinating chapters.
Yeah, and there was more in there, and I had to condense it all. I mean, there's some of the stuff that didn't make it in was talking about Marco Polo and how when he was in China that they actually had dinosaurs on chains. They were on display. They called them dragons. And I also had a thing about the Celtic legends of dragons, and there's a legend of this guy slaying the dragon, and he was really worried about drowning in the dragon's blood from stabbing it underneath its body, because the blood would come out so fast that he wouldn't be able to get out fast enough. And I tried to get the best of all that stuff, but I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that it's super compressed, and yet at the same time I wrote it to be smooth and readable. I've never ever worked this hard on anything in my life, not even close.
And let me tell you, David, you have succeeded beyond your wildest dreams, because when I got a copy of your book from your publisher, I looked at it and I thought, oh my word, am I going to be able to get through this? I could not put it down. It's masterful. So,
what part do you think hits you the most? I mean, since I haven't really been able to talk to anybody who's read it yet, I'm interested in hearing.
Well, I can tell you what I'm most interested in. I have a list here. It's on loose leaf paper, David. Let me just tell you the things I've listed that thrilled me. Okay, number one, the ley lines, acoustic levitation, our stargates, naturally parallel universes. Why does the Mayan calendar end, quote unquote, in 2012? How do we enter parallel universes? My God. Dueling gravitational forces, Tibetan sound levitation with Dr. Jarl, and the vortexes around the Earth. David, what came to me, what I would love you to do, I would love you to have a tour of ley lines, and we could, those of us interested, could be part of a tour. It would naturally not be around the entire world, but it could be part of the world, and we could walk the ley lines and feel the energy, because some of us are very sensitive to energies, and with you leading it, oh my word, that would be a book in itself. It would be a movie.
Yeah, we've done that before. We've done the Caribbean. There's a nice vortex. Bermuda Triangle is a nice vortex. I mean, it does dematerialize planes in flight sometimes, but
yes, I know. Oh, it's a small thing, David. Don't worry about it.
It's a minor trivial issue, but
right. Just get your will current.
We did the crop circle trip a couple of years ago in London, southern England rather, and that was amazing. And that's a big vortex point. And also, people don't realize there's a vortex point in Western Canada, in Alberta, in the Canadian Rockies, and I just did a tour there. Banff is one of the most beautiful places on Earth, and that's where there's these gorgeous mountains, and that's a vortex point. Very, very amazing. And I live in Los Angeles, which is basically right above, one of the biggest vortexes is in Baja California, just south of San Diego.
Yes, yes.
And
for our listeners,
no surprise that the western headquarters of the so-called Illuminati is in San Diego. I mean, they did that for a reason.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Now, David, I know that there are some people who are listening who do not know what a vortex is. Would you, in 25 words or less, explain to them what a vortex is?
Okay, I think everybody has a fair idea of vortexes from sci-fi.
Right.
And they're just not accustomed to the fact that we've been going through for 60 years something that the insiders call PRI, or processed release of information, which is that they're seeding things that are true into the public consciousness through fiction.
Yes.
Now, I mean, you're very enthusiastic about my work, and that's great. I love that. There are going to be people listening to this who violently hate me. It always happens. And they seem to really like to write comments on videos and stuff, but here's the deal.
Yeah.
I know that some people have a real hard time with this, and I don't really expect that they're going to change their minds.
Right.
But I want the open-minded people who see these kind of comments to realize that the reason why these people hate so much, whether they acknowledge it or not, is that they see that this reality that I'm presenting to the world does have credibility.
Yes.
But what they keep saying is that the only weapon they've ever had is, well, David makes all these unscientific assertions, and he's out there gas-bagging about all these ridiculous things, but science knows better. Okay, I've gotten tired of hearing that for over a decade. I've gotten tired of people writing the most ridiculously profane, hateful, sexually inappropriate letters, and this is my final attempt. I took stuff that I probably, if I was smart, people blast me, they say, oh, he's trying to make all this money. Look, if I was trying to make money, as you probably now can see, I could have blown this out into 7 volumes.
Easily.
There's no reason for why somebody trying to make money would take this much stuff and cram it into 1 volume. I mean, words were at such a scarcity that it's just like, it's insane. But I don't want to focus on all these minutia. A lot of people write me and they say, David, don't even talk about the haters, don't even worry about it. And I think that now that I've done sort of like the definitive encyclopedia mystica, that
yes.
we can from there just say, okay, this has been accomplished. And I hope that what will happen from now on is that when these haters start going off on their rants, people who have read the book will have educated themselves, and they can say, but look at this, and look at this, and look at this.
Yes, yes. I agree with you.
What I've also done is I made sure that we put it out in ebook form. And I want to point out to people that if you are getting into it in the hardcover version, which obviously having a hardcover book is great, I would highly recommend getting that. But the ebook, it's not just that you have another source of text. It's the fact that there's over 1,000 references in this book, and I strove as much as humanly possible to have everything that I referred to be readable online. So if you get the ebook, you can click on the links in the references section, and now you've got a massive amount of reading material over and above what's in the book. So it's like this huge endowment of like where to look to do more research and get educated on this stuff.
It is like a mini encyclopedia. It is truly a great work, David. And yes, I'm biased, but that doesn't change the fact that it is truly a great work. And it has to be read.
People who like my work like it because they realize what I've done here. This is the most important information you could ever spend your time reading.
I agree.
There is nothing more important. For whatever reason, and it does feel unfortunate to me, I have had to do this predominantly by myself. The model is so complex, and the amount of difficulty in putting this stuff together. I mean, if I had had the normal life of the love of family and children, I would not have been able to do this.
True.
I'm 38 years old. I've never been married. I don't have any kids. I'm not planning on having them because I couldn't be a good father. I'm on this stuff all day, every day. That's all I do. And I would be a lousy parent because I am so dedicated to doing this. And I couldn't have written this book if I hadn't spent the last 19 years in particular absolutely slavishly focused on this, 24/7. But you asked me about a vortex point, and let's try to get into some real meat here.
Okay, go ahead, but I just want to tell you that I have to give the name of the book again so people can get it. It's called The Source Field Investigations. David, you may also want to, for the lay person, explain what the source field is, as well as there's the title right there, as well as vortexes. And let's do this. If we run out of time for this show, let's just do another one next week. So we'll just pick up where we left off.
Okay, that sounds good.
That sounds great. Okay, honey, you're on.
All right. So this is the condensed version of what we've really got here. The concept of a source field is the idea that the universe is built of consciousness. A lot of people have said that. What they don't realize is that there is reputable science in many, many cases that is mainstream. So I'm not going into obscure Hermetic texts or Masonic literature. I do draw off of that stuff a little bit, but most 80-90% of what's in the book is all stuff that is done by credible mainstream scientists. And what happens is you have everybody on this binge of information right now, and we're all being saturated with all this content. And what I'm doing is going through and sifting through the internet and looking for things that catch my interest. And I've been doing this for ever since I got online in 95. I have documented every single thing that I find on the internet that interests me, where I say, well, isn't that something, And by that point, by the time I was in 95, I already had a pretty good view of this idea that there is a conscious energy field that makes space, that actually is responsible for the flow of time, that's responsible for the construction of physical matter out of a substrate or an energetic ether. Some people call it the ether. It's responsible for biological life, and it's responsible for our human consciousness. Consciousness is not relegated to the brain. The function of the brain seems to be more like an antenna or a relay for a thought process that is largely non-physical and doesn't even require your body to exist. Now, here's something that's not in the book. This is a fascinating thing.
Yes.
I've been fortunate enough to speak to a lot of insiders who have worked in highly classified projects for the United States government, for the Australian government, and other governments, which, of course, it's all, the term government is kind of insignificant when you're dealing with who these people really are and what they're about, because it's all multinational defense contractor corporations. And that's another level of it, and then there's a level beyond that where it's all sort of a cult group. These people have, in some cases, tried to get me to espouse their philosophies. If someone gets too pushy and tries to get me to believe in their idea of depopulation, I discontinue the contact. I have only maintained contact with people who either are working or have worked, but who do not subscribe to this genocidal insanity. I don't want to populate my life with somebody who's a genocidal freak. I'm not going to talk to that person. I'm not going to invite that energy into my life. And one of the other things the haters keep doing is they say, oh my God, David's in the Illuminati. That is totally not true. In fact, this book is the ultimate weapon against bloody tyranny. And isn't it is so interesting that on the day the book comes out, we have rebels overthrowing a tyrannical dictatorship in Libya, basically storming into Gaddafi's own royal courtyard and smashing the icons. And then on the very same day, we have this quake on the East Coast, the most significant earthquake in a century on the East Coast, which actually cracks the Pyramidion on top of the Washington Monument.
Unbelievable.
The eye on it's the eye on top of the pyramid. It's the capstone on the monument. That's the part that cracked. And I've got the articles showing that. And those two things put together, combined with the fact that the day before this happened, this is kind of hilarious, but I'm sitting on the toilet, okay?
Don't hold back, David.
And I see this cloud that's all rainbow. But there's no other rainbow around. It's only this cloud that's got a rainbow. And I'm going to have that picture on my website as soon as we sort out what's going on with the Huffington Post. We're supposed to be on the weird news section. We're supposed to be on the front page. And we are on the book section. That did happen last night, but the other two that they told us was going to happen hasn't happened yet. So we're waiting on that coming out. And when it does, I'm going to make a big announcement about it. But in the meantime, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this cloud, and I'm saying, this is just like what people are saying happens before a big earthquake that's triggered by HAARP, HAARP, the High Altitude Atmospheric and Auroral Research Project. So that's a manufactured quake, which apparently something about the technology they use causes a lensing effect in the atmosphere that creates rainbow clouds, where there's no other rainbow and it's just the cloud. And I've never seen one of them in my life. I've only seen videos of Chile and China and various places where these clouds appeared hours before a massive, massive earthquake.
Wow.
So the day before, I see this, and then my girlfriend is saying, oh, you've got to mention this on Coast, and I totally forgot. But I did see it, I did photograph it, and then there was an earthquake in Colorado, and then that was a big earthquake, and then there was a big earthquake on the East Coast. So this may have been something that was done deliberately, but I don't think it was deliberate that it cracked the Washington Monument's capstone. And I am stunned because another thing that just happened recently was on Monday of the second week of August, there was a major, major economic collapse, which was the biggest one since the December 2nd, 2008 collapse of the markets, which was sort of like around the time of Lehman Brothers and all these big derivatives companies that collapsed.
Right.
Well, one of the things that happened was that the first big collapse of the markets that actually led to the big reveal where the economy fell apart, the Dow went down by exactly 777 points. And I don't think that's a coincidence. When you're talking about this idea of the source field, we're talking about an intelligence that underlies reality.
Yes.
And that intelligence is totally capable of tweaking people's free will on a collective level, like looking at it as if it were a single matrix. So this one guy decides to buy 15,555 shares because he likes the fives, and maybe that's his occult significance,
Yep.
But as a result of all these weird little decisions that people make, you get a 777 in the market, which also, it's not just that it's a repeating number. It's the fact that if you're in a casino and you play slots, 777 is the jackpot. But what it's actually saying here is that the whole economy is a casino. You see where I'm going with this?
Oh, my. Yes, go ahead. Keep going.
So check this out. The Monday of the second week of August of 2011, we have another major economic contraction, which is the scariest one that it's been since all this stuff happened in 2008. And when that contraction happened, at the end of the day, the Dow had dropped by 6.66%. the exact same time, the S&P 500 dropped by 5.55%.
There's the fives.
Now, that is the likelihood that this could happen by quote-unquote random chance is staggeringly low. We're dealing with an intelligent manifestation of something. And another example I give, there's two more examples I want to give. I totally agree that the Obama administration has run off the rails. I don't know what the hell is going on in there. You know, I had dreams that indicated that they were going to do a lot that was positive. I'm still open-minded about the fact that they could pull off a disclosure. I think that would, you know, change a lot. In fact, it appears from the insider chatter I'm hearing that there's mass arrests getting ready to happen of a huge number of these financiers who architected this whole financial chicanery in the first place and basically created this situation where they had to get bailed out. I mean, imagine if we know that the bailouts are enough money to have paid off everybody's mortgage in the country. And if everybody's mortgage was paid off, all the extra money they would have stimulated the economy.
Yes. Yes.
Right? So what the hell have we done by giving it to these bankers? They haven't given anybody loans. They haven't done anything new with the money except pocket it and fly off to Aruba. And it's ridiculous and it's horrible. And people are hating on Obama like crazy, and I get it. Believe me, I get it. But what we're hearing on the inside is that the final legalese is being worked out. I actually know somebody who's working on the legalese of this whole new agreement, which basically is a bloodless surrender of the Illuminati. That's what's going on right now.
Now, David, can I put you, at least mentally, on pause? Hold that thought. And we're going to continue this discussion next week. Please join me next week for the continuation of our story with David Wilcock. This is Maxine Taylor saying, may the stars shine brightly on you and yours.